All set.
Okay. All right. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Summum Bonum, Chapter 1. How do I share? Share. Chapter 1, verses 65 and 66. Risher vinigrame kamso yadun matva sudaniti devakya gadbha sambhutam vishnum chasva vadham prati devakim vasudevam cha nigrihya nigadar grihe jatam jatamahan putram tayor ajana sankaya. Translation, Bindu Madhava Prabhu.
Translation: after the departure of the great Saint Narada, Kamsa thought that all the members of the Yadu dynasty were demigods, and any of the children born from the womb of Devaki might be Vishnu. Fearing his death, Kamsa arrested Vasudeva and Devaki and chained them with iron shackles. Suspecting each of the children to be Vishnu, Kamsa killed them one after another, because of the prophecy that Vishnu would kill him. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Jiva Goswami, in his notes on this verse, has mentioned how Narada Muni gave Kamsa this information. This incident is described in the Hari Vamsha. Narada Muni went to see Kamsa by providence, and Kamsa received him very well. Narada therefore informed him that any of the sons of Devaki might be Vishnu. Because Vishnu was to kill him, Kamsa should not spare any of Devaki's children, Narada Muni advised. Narada's intention was that Kamsa, by killing the children, would increase his sinful activities so that Krishna would soon appear to kill him. Upon receiving the instructions of Narada Muni, Kamsa killed all the children of Devaki, one after another. The word Ajna Sankhya indicates that Lord Vishnu never takes birth, Ajna, and that he therefore appeared as Krishna, taking birth just like a human being. Kamsa attempted to kill all the babies born of Devaki and Vasudeva, although he knew that if Vishnu were born, he would not be killed. Actually, it came to pass that when Vishnu appeared as Krishna, Kamsa could not kill him. Rather, as foretold, it was he who killed Kamsa. One should know in truth how Krishna, who takes his birth transcendentally, acts to kill the demon, but it is never killed. When one perfectly understands Krishna in this way, through the medium of Shastra, one becomes immortal. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo vete tatvata taitva deham puna janma naiti mam etesu so Arjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in the material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pacharani Nivashesha Shindvari Pasta Chades Om Vijnanati Manindajaya Ginanjana Salakaya Chakshun Unmile Tamjena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Hare Krishna, thank you for inviting me, as unqualified as I am, to give this class. I was asked to, of course, read this verse, and last night when I read this purport, I was like fascinated that Narada Muni is encouraging Kamsa to become more sinful. Usually devotees are encouraging people to follow the Vedas, follow the scripture, and follow their spiritual master, and to try to be good. And in this case, we find that Narada Muni, one of the greatest preachers who travels all over the world or all over the universes, is encouraging him to be more sinful, hoping that the benefit of that would be that Krishna would come sooner. So I guess in life, we always have to weigh things. In this case, it was more beneficial that Krishna come sooner and all the children were killed than somehow or another keeping them alive. Pretty interesting. So today's Tamal Krishnamarge Goswami's appearance or disappearance day. And he was one of the great leaders of ISKCON, certainly in the early days, and well, all the way through until his departure. When you look at pictures of Prabhupada in the early days, you'll see so many pictures. Tamal Krishnamarge is always there next to Prabhupada. He was very close to Prabhupada and good at following his instructions and preaching and pushing on the movement and taking up Prabhupada's one of his most important, maybe the most important instruction of book distribution. Let me start a little bit by, does anybody have any other comments or questions about this verse and Narada Muni's encouraging Kamsa to become more sinful before I get into a little talk about Tamar Krishnamarge? Somebody must have a comment.
How wonderful is Krishna, how he does things in such a creative way, even if it's beyond our logic, and it's always perfect and for our greatest benefit. We can just be confident that Krishna knows what he's doing.
Yeah, because we wouldn't be able to figure this one out on our own, that's for sure. Always surrender to Krishna and trust his instructions. All right, so I guess I'll talk now about Tamal Krishnamarge. He was in California living on a hippie commune called Morning Star with his friend Vishnu Jan, well, who later became Vishnu Jan Swami. And
somebody told me he was naked living in a tree.
Naked living in a tree, yes. And also Gaur-Hari was naked living on that hippie commune. And when Prabhupada came, he slapped Prabhupada on the back and said, "Hey, Swamiji." So that was, it was a pretty wild commune back in those days.
He told us, Prabhupada said to me, he was there naked, digging potatoes. And Prabhupada said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm digging potatoes." And Prabhupada said, "No, what are you doing with your life?"
Yeah, so I think Tamal Krishnamarge was playing a drum and Vishnu Jan Swami was playing flute. He was, Vishnu Jan was married. I think his wife was pregnant. Tamal Krishnamarge was single, and that's where they met Srila Prabhupada. And later on, Tamal Krishnamarge joined the LA temple, and he soon became one of the leaders. He would always lead Sankirtan out on the street, many long hours, and any organization or organizing, he was expert at doing that and motivating the devotees. It's pretty amazing how much they knew about Krishna back then, because there were only about 4 books out, but still they were very versed on speaking, I guess, from the heart and they were definitely surrendered to Krishna and Prabhupada, and they were receiving knowledge in that way. So Tamar Krishnamarge was working while living in the temple. He was working in a Kodak factory, opening up the cans of film and loading it into a machine, and giving the money to the temple at that point. He soon found out that he could do more service being in the temple, so he didn't work there that long. He later started Radha Damodar with Vishnu Jan Swami and so many other Brahmacharis and leaders of the movement back in those days. And they had 3 or 4 Greyhound buses, which they converted into temples. And some of the buses had Gornitai. Some of the one of the buses had Radha Damodar, who is now living in Gita Nagri. And they would travel all over the country, dealing with the harshest weather. And if they were down south and they were wearing their dhotis and dressed like devotees, they'd get hassled by the cops. If they were up north, they would take their morning bath by rolling in the snow. I heard many stories, like if they were in Minnesota or Michigan or some places up north, and that was how they took their morning baths, by rolling in the snow. They were super austere, and they would just travel around the country. They'd get up, they'd have a full morning program, and they would pick up devotees along the way. The young men, they were go out in parking lots and distribute incense and books and collect money in that way, and distribute many tons of books. And they made hundreds and hundreds of devotees. That party was very powerful, and Vishnu Jan and Tamar Krishnamarge were like the Pied Piper, because wherever they would go to colleges and things like that and preach to young people. And back then it was not too uncommon that you could just split and go do something else, even though you were in college and had some kind of plan. But they were such good preachers that they could attract so many people. They were also good at going to temples and attracting brahmacharis in the temple. In fact, they were criticized for that. They would pull up to a temple, tell the brahmacharis that the temples were Maya because there were women there and you aren't going out on book distribution all day. So they would convince the brahmacharis to leave the temple. And then they'd go to another temple and continue to do the same thing. So finally the temple presidents were pretty annoyed. So they spoke up to Prabhupada and said, hey, they're stealing our devotees. What can we do? So that program kind of got squashed, where they were able to go in and just take devotees from different temples. And they made many sannyasis, Dristadumna Tripurari Swami, Adikeshava, so many different leaders who became sannyasis and temple presidents, regional secretaries, and they were organizing the movement in America. So that was one of his greatest activities, was organizing and distributing books and things like that. I first met Tamar Krishnamarge Goswami in 1976. He was living at the 55th Street Temple and getting that prepped for Prabhupada's visit and Rathayatra. So that was a major victory, was getting Fifth Avenue to have Rathayatra and Prabhupada wanted to be there for the first Rathayatra down Fifth Avenue. Prabhupada stressed how New York was the most important city, and Fifth Avenue being the most important street in New York City. So Prabhupada was going to be there, and many of the leaders gathered at the 55th Street Temple to organize it, because it wasn't clean, and it needed a lot of work. It was an old nursing home, and wasn't very sanitary. So Tamar Krishnamarge posted on two of the pillars in the temple a countdown from 30 days on. So every day at Bhagavatam class, they'd pull down another day. Okay, Prabhupada will be here in 29 days. Prabhupada will be here in 28 days. And was teaching everybody, the classes were on how to treat Prabhupada, and to get the temple ready. And devotees were working 24/7, painting murals in the temple, cleaning the different rooms, getting the marble together for the altar, building the altar. So many activities were going on, and there were hundreds and hundreds of devotees living there, waiting for Prabhupada to come. And every morning he would give class. So Tamar Krishnamarge, or we'd call him Goswami. Everybody called him Goswami because he was super heavy. He was very strict, and he can really put the screws into you if you did something the wrong way. Oh, thank you for joining me, Raj Bihari Prabhu. So he was known as Goswami, and heavy and very strict, meticulous in everything that he did. And I was going to the temple at that time fairly regularly, and I was at a Sunday feast, and this devotee Buddhi Manta, who was one of the biggest book distributors at that time, he's since left his body probably about 25 years ago. But
in Vrindavan, he left.
In Vrindavan, thank you very much. He was a very good preacher, big book distributor. So he said, "Oh, we have better prasadam upstairs. Come with me, I'll take you. We'll go upstairs and you can get better prasadam." So he took me up, I think it was the 7th floor, and Tamar Krishnamarge was sitting at a low desk, and around the walls were about 7 or 8 different sannyasis. Just Dumna Maharaj, Chaitanya Swami, Brahmananda Maharaj was there, and they had me sit down in the middle of the circle. So Tamar Krishnamarge was kind of at the head at his desk, and all these other sannyasis were sitting there. And Tamar Krishnamarge started to, "Oh, Motorcycle Bob, I hear you've been coming for a while," and just started preaching to me. And you always hear these stories about Prabhupada, how Prabhupada could see right through everybody. He knew who you were.
This Motorcycle Bob, that's you, Prabhu? You're Motorcycle Bob?
Motorcycle Bob.
Okay. Hell's Angels?
Sorry?
Hell's Angels? What gang were you with?
Yeah, I was in the Krishna gang. I had bought in 1975 a Honda Goldwing. It was blue, and I pasted pictures of Krishna on the gas tank. And I went cross country. I was 19. I went cross country by myself with a tent and a sleeping bag. And I'd stop at different temples. I stayed at the Miami temple for about a month, where met Narahari Prabhu and Raghava, the temple president, temple treasurer, Bhakta Michael, who later became Druta Karma. He was Bhakta Michael at that point. and Mahashringa, another wonderful devotee who helped me a lot. Anyway, so I stayed there for a month at a time. Then I left there and they said, oh, you should go to Gainesville Temple. Gainesville has the best prasadam. So off I went to Gainesville, stayed there for maybe a week. Then I left there and continued my travels across America on my motorcycle with pictures of Krishna on the tank. I was very proud of that. Then I went to New Orleans Temple. Then traveling through Texas, I ran into the Radha Damodar party, and some brahmacharis were trying to convince me I should join the bus, give up the motorcycle. Back then, if you wanted to become a devotee, you had to give up anything that you owned: money, bank accounts, businesses.
Bindu, they told me to drop out of school, just, get out of college right away tomorrow and get on the bus.
Right, because we were surrendering to Mukunda, the giver of liberation, and that freed you from all your material debts and things like that. Anyway, so I continued on going temple to temple, Houston Temple, Dallas. And then after living in Arizona for a couple of months, no temples, I zipped back to New York and started visiting the 55th Street Temple. And as the summer was approaching, I was in this room, and Tamar Krishnamarge saw right through me. Any questions I had or any doubts or anything, he was perfect at giving a proper answer and defeating any arguments that my puny brain might have. So that was my first experience with Tamar Krishnamarge. And he convinced me to move in. I moved the motorcycle into the garage that we had down the block, and I forget how long after I moved in that they sold the motorcycle. My pride and joy. So I was living with Tamar Krishnamarge. He had a bhakti program where every day the new bhaktas would have special classes and things like that. And I felt very close to Guru Dev. He was also known as Guru Dev. He taught me how to put tilak on, although he put his tilak on meticulously, perfectly. Everything had to be perfect with Tamar Krishnamarge. Taught me how to shave up, and I was allowed to shave him up on a number of occasions. You had to be very careful, because if you cut any hairs of a Sikha, you were in big trouble, and you would definitely feel the heat for some time. And he was very austere and very strict. I remember when I was doing my traveling, and I would meet different swamis from different movements and things like that. And I was always curious, how they lived. People are giving up all their possessions, and then they're just taking their money, and how are they spending the money, and are they really living what they're preaching? And I didn't see that in the other movements, but here I was living with one of the heads of the society, and saw that he was getting up every morning for Mangal Artik, and all the other devotees were getting up, taking their cold showers, getting up early to chant their japa, going to Mangal Artik, going to class, very strict sadhana program. And so I saw how the devotees were actually walking the walk, not just talking. Anyway, so that was very instrumental, being a very cynical New Yorker. I had many doubts about how the leaders were living and things like that. So this gave me an opportunity to see that. So he had the Bhakti program, very nice devotees, Murli Vadaka and Trilokeshwar came out of that program, and many others. and those devotees stayed for long, long time, were very good book distributors. Some of them became leaders. And he would teach us all these different little things, how to be aware of Krishna. So in our ashram, where these brahmacharis were living, there were two big pictures. I think they were 16 by 20 or something like that, 11 by 16, pictures of Radha Govinda, just their faces close up. And they were in this room, and then one day he walked in, he said, "This isn't good. We're changing in front of Radha Govinda. That's not good. This is actually Radha Govinda, Krishna, and we're changing in front of them." So put a stop to that. We took the pictures down, put them somewhere else where we wouldn't be changing and things like that. So little things like that, just always being aware of his surroundings and using different experiences to teach about tolerance. One day we were walking in Central Park on a morning japa walk, and we had a nice path, and there would be like 20 devotees, 30 devotees on these japa walks, and he would be walking in front, leading. And one day a bird did his thing on Tamar Krishnamarge's head. And of course, that's not a very nice thing, but he wiped it off, and you got to tolerate. These are one of the three miseries of material existence, miseries inflicted on us by other living entities. So another, always pointing out examples, giving great classes in the morning, and just always talking about and motivating people to preach. So one of the things he would announce at the Sunday feast or Bhagavatam class, the morning of the Sunday feast, he would say, everybody should shave up, wear your best clothes. The women should dress up and look as, very nice, have their best saris on and things like that. And we shouldn't be sitting with each other enjoying the Sunday feast. We should be sitting with guests. He didn't want to see any devotees sitting together and talking about how great the malpurs were, or the gulabs, or Brahmin spaghetti, or whatever. It was always important to be preaching to guests that came, treat them very nicely, give them personal, friendly association and things like that. And so he stressed things like that. And he was whipping us all into shape to get ready for Prabhupada coming and things like that. He was very instrumental in the court case that was going on. This is back in the days of Ted Patrick and the deprogrammers, and we were being sued for kidnapping and things like that. And there was a whole legal team, Tamar Krishnamarge, Romapad Swami, Adikeshwara, and other devotees who had legal experience. And he was instrumental in fighting to clear Prabhupada's name and to get Hare Krishna as an authorized bona fide religion and things like that. And he always wanted to look his best, so he sent me to Brooks Brothers to get him a nice shirt, because he wanted to be meticulously dressed and make a good appearance for Prabhupada in the court.
What about his sikha? Did he wear sikha in court?
Yes. Yeah, he always had a sikha.
Okay.
Sikha, tilak, all that was very important.
Okay.
So in his many years of leading the society, he had a number of different projects. He certainly built up Dallas and Houston. Dallas became a nice community, not on the scale of Alachua, but I'd say there were probably a few hundred devotees living in the Dallas temple. They had a wonderful restaurant that's still there, still functioning. Actually, I just read an article in some news magazine how Kalachandji's is considered one of the best 15 restaurants in the country. So that's, they feed many people come to that restaurant. They really like it. There was the school there. So we had built a very nice community there. I also lived in his community he had in the Philippines, in Cebu. There were some devotees that had a couple of different businesses, and there was a nice farm community and things like that. And there was a coral jewelry business and a dried mango business. And they had a nice group of devotees living there in Cebu. And obviously, he was famous for opening up China and doing a lot of preaching in China. He didn't want to go to China because it was a communist country. It was very closed off. But Prabhupada said he had to go to China, and he's opened up China. I know we still have some more time. Anybody want to add?
In a humorous note, there was some controversy about how the Rathayatra buses would be inviting brahmacharis living in the temples, come on the bus with us. You know, we're all brahmacharis, and in the house, the householder is temple president is a householder, and you know it's better you have this kind of association. So there was some controversy, and then at one point, Srila Prabhupada, Tamar Krishnamarge told us, Prabhupada told me when he was telling me, you know, this isn't good, you know, you're causing some controversy. And he said, what should I do? Go to China? And Prabhupada, oh, yes, you should go to Red China. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. He said, but Prabhupada, I've got, you know, 7 buses and so many vans and so many brahmacharis, they're all depending on me. And he said, Prabhupada said to me, nobody's depending on you. I was like, what, you know? And he said, so I was a good manager. So I managed not to go to Red China for a few years. And then one day, everything started falling apart. And my godbrothers told me, go sit in front of the deities and meditate on, you know, what there might be something that you're doing that's not pleasing to Prabhupada. And then he went to Red China. He said it was tremendous surrender, you know, it was dangerous and far away. And he said, you know, they don't drink milk, and, you know, they don't say Hare, they say Hale, and they don't say Krishna, they say Krishna. You know, he said they can't even chant the holy name, and they're, you know, they're very, you know, it's not a very fertile ground, you know. But he said that was the point, you know. Prabhupada would tell me something, and I got so much over the years, so many times. He said Prabhupada would be very gentle with some devotees, but with me, he laid out the hot sauce. He just gave me the frank, straight out chastisement, blunt, like the thunderbolt, you know. And I guess he felt I could handle it, you know, and it was pretty intense. But they said that was a classic example. Prabhupada said, yeah, you should go to Red China. What, Red China? Anyway, Krishna has all these, how wonderful is Krishna? He arranges all of us to have adventures and what's called the Kurukshetra moment. We may have some cozy little service that we're comfortable with, that we would prefer, that we like doing. But sometimes Krishna will ask you to do something that's difficult or doesn't seem logical, like Vasudeva is asked, let them, he felt like Krishna was telling him, all right, tell Kamsa to kill the kids, you know. Or Krishna asking Arjuna, kill your martial arts teacher, fight against your grandfather, your cousins. You know, this is not something that would be easily understood or palatable, but that's the criteria that we have, that what does my spiritual master want me to do? And Hamsa Dudamar said one time, yeah, people say I can't get close to Prabhupada. And he said because if you go close to Prabhupada, he might ask you to do something. Mm-hmm. You know, he might ask you. So if you keep the guru at arm's length, we call it guru in a box. Here's my toaster. Here's my cell phone. Here's my guru. Haribo. don't get too close. But Tamal Krishna, like you said, he was right there. And that meant asking the one question that Prabhupada said he asked his spiritual master, how can I serve you? Not what I would like, but what do you want me to do? After all of Bhagavad Gita, then Arjuna says, oh, I get it. All right. Now I'm a disciple. Friendly talks are over. Now I'm a soul surrendered unto you. Please tell me, how can I serve you? And Krishna told him, stand and fight. Abandon all desire for gain and safety. Fight for me. So Tamal Krishna was that kind of quality relationship with Srila Prabhupada. Or maybe I'm saying too much. All glories to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
No. Please continue.
I could add a few things, Bindu, if you want.
Yes.
So in 1988, I was in San Diego, and Maharaj came and he said, I want you to be my servant for the 3 days that I'm here, you know. Well, I said, no, I'm too busy. No, I didn't say that. Obviously. So I was there because I was engaged at that time to the person who's my wife now. And at one point he said, nah, he said, come with me to China. He said, being with me is a lot more fun than hanging out with any woman. So I didn't go to China at that time, but I have visited there 4 or 5 times, feeling that I should fulfill that desire of Maharaj's. And because Andrea is saying, tell a little bit about the preaching in China. It's amazing. There's so many devotees all over, and you have to be careful because, you know, especially in the small towns, the big cities, the police are, just don't cause too much trouble. But in small towns, it's kind of like cool to catch a Hare Krishna, and you might even get a promotion or something as a police. So we have to be careful. I was in Nanning, which is one of the westernmost towns on the border of Vietnam, and I was like the only Westerner they've ever seen there. You know, so I really had to lay low. But back to Maharaj, he also mellowed out a lot over the years, Bindu. You know, he definitely did mellow out over the years. And one time he gave this kind of controversial class in Vrindavan. Most of my association with him was in Vrindavan. And he called for my wife and I that evening because he could tell by my body language during the class. I was like, what the heck? You know? So he had this amazing, you know, he had this birthmark here, right? And it was almost like a third eye, like he could look, like you were saying, Bindu, he could look into your soul, right? And he you know, he knew something was up with my wife and I, so he called us into his room and he said, well, what did you think about the class today? And I was like, oh, should I be honest? Anyway, so that was another example. One of his projects is the ISKCON Ashram at Govardhana. He worked with Giriraj Swami on that. And it was this beautiful, it is this beautiful, it was a fort practically built by a king, a Rajasthani king. And he went through, it's not easy to buy anything in India land-wise. And so but he was, you know, the kind of determination you were talking about, Bindu, he just, I want this land. And he got this one devotee, Mahamantra Bhuvana. He just said, you just do whatever it takes and you don't stop until you get it done. You know? And so now it's this amazing, beautiful place, which also has his samadhi, his Pushpa samadhi is there. And he, first time he gave a class on the nectar of devotion over a month in Vrindavan. And I remember because I was going to India and I took Raghunath with me. It was his first trip to India. He was not Raghu, he was Ray at that time and didn't know much about Krishna consciousness. So we were in, but Tamal Krishnamarge took a liking to him. And in his class, there's a part of the nectar of devotion that says you should offer your favorite item to Krishna. right? So he was going around the room, and a lot of devotees were saying, were kind of like doing the mental thing, like I'd offer Krishna a golden throne or this or that. And so when it got to Raghunath, he said, my favorite thing, I guess I'd give Krishna my sweatshirt. And Tamal Krishnamarge almost hit the floor laughing like that. My son was very young at the time, maybe 2, 3, and Maharaj used to like to tap him on the head with his danda, and like that. So he was. One other time, we were going to Beverly Hills. There was a devotee. So we were in San Diego that trip, and he wanted to go visit a devotee in Beverly Hills who it was their parents' house, but the parents had given this devotee the house. So I went with him and Gunagrahi Maharaj. Gunagrahi Maharaj also left this world maybe 2 years ago now. And so I had this, my mom had bought me this Toyota van, one of these minivans where it has windows all around so you could see into the van. But all of the seats folded so you could actually have quite a comfortable bed. So Maharaj said, well, I want to take rest before we go see. So I was parked on this exclusive street in Beverly Hills, and people walking by and looking into the van and seeing these 2 sannyasis sleeping. Just like, oh, like that. And then we went to see this devotee, and Maharaj was like, they went in with their dandas because they knew that this devotee was going to be like in Western clothes and kind of like getting on his case a little bit. So they went in all shaved up. He made sure they had fresh tilak. Both had their dandas in their hand just to make an impression. But I still remember the faces of the Beverly Hills folks. They weren't Beverly Hill Billies for sure. Beverly Hills folks looking into my van and like, what is going on? So yeah, a lot of wonderful times with Maharaj. Also, that last year when he passed away in Mayapur, he was having kirtans every night in his room, and they were beautiful kirtans. And he hadn't been to Mayapur or the GBC meetings for years. Because of his studies. He was in, I'll talk about his studies in a second, but it was just wonderful. And he was just so inviting to all of his godbrothers, and just great loving exchanges were going on. And even a godbrother who he was having some challenges with, they sat down, they made up, and had, it was a very deep thing. And it was so nice that he had that experience before he left this world. So his studies, he went to Cambridge to, first of all, he went to SMU, Southern Methodist University. Always, like the question was, he go to school every day in tilak, dhoti, kurta, shaved head, the whole 9 yards. And of course, being Tamal Krishnamarge, he graduated top of his class, all that. And he couldn't go to grad school at NYU. It had to be either Oxford or Cambridge, like the top of the top of the top. So he had just almost finished. Shonaka Rishi Prabhu, who's in charge of the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies, he always had this vision that ISKCON devotees need to capture our sampradaya. So they should be the experts on Jiva Goswami, and therefore Radhika Raman Prabhu wrote his dissertation on Jiva Goswami, and now he's a big professor. And then there was a devotee who would get his PhD on Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and it was Tamal Krishnamarge on Prabhupada. And so he had almost finished his book, and he had developed such a relationship with this professor, like one of the biggest professors in Cambridge, and that professor agreed to finish the book. Just out of he had developed such a loving relationship with Tamal Krishnamarge. And it was really amazing to visit Tamal Krishnamarge in Cambridge. So then just last thing, Bindu, if it's okay.
Please.
Because I know your favorite topic is prasadam. And you were kind of saying about it, but he was such a connoisseur. Oh my God, was he a connoisseur of prasadam? And if anything was a little not perfect, call the cooks, call the cook, and they would find out that it wasn't perfect. And he was, so taking prasadam with him was an event. It was, it was like when I got an invitation to take, I told my wife, don't worry, you don't have to cook for the rest of the day, forget about it. I'm going to be well fed. And everything had to be, because there's an art to serving prasadam. Like, for example, chapatis should, ideally, now of course, but ideally, especially if you're just serving a few people in your home, chapatis should be fresh right off the grill and just served to you the second the last chapati is finished. Right? There's no gap whatsoever. And small amounts, prasadam should be served in small amounts, but replenished the second you finish that preparation. And so with him, usually it was like 8 or 10 preparations, right? So the second that one sabji was done, there would be somebody putting another small amount back on your plate. So you had no idea how much you ate by the end of the meal, because you had no count of the chapatis, because or the puris, because they had just been replenished all the time. And it was an event. It wasn't. It was really honoring prasadam instead of just having lunch or dinner. It was honoring it. So yes, Tamar Krishnamarge ki jai.
That's a great point. He actually trained me how to serve prasadam. I was in Mayapur. I used to serve the GBC gurus and sannyasis.
I remember when you did that.
And 55th Street, that was my service, was any temple president, GBCs, sannyas, whatever. That was my job, was to serve them. And he was very careful in teaching me how to serve. I remember one Ekadasi, somebody brought him the Mahaprasadam in the morning, and there were grains on the plate because it was the Mahaprasadam. And he blew up that, oh, you're serving me grains on Ekadasi. Now I've broken it, even though he didn't eat anything, but because he looked at it and he was thinking about eating it, the devotee that had brought it up was severely chastised for almost having him break prasadam. He was so strict like that. Somebody asked about the books. Let me share.
I'm putting it in the chat.
Okay. Because I was going to share my screen. I have.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Bindu. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Right. Scrolling across the screen is different books.
Yeah. There he is at Southern Methodist University there.
And this was a play, the drama of Lord Jagannath.
Jagannath Natakam, yeah. And that was a book for the Chinese devotees, Yoga for the New Millennium.
Servant to the Servant was a fabulous book.
Yeah.
That Jagannath Priyanatakam play is extraordinary. If anybody can get a chance to, it was done with its series of recording, and it's just the most wonderful pastime of Krishna's appearance as Jagannath and Indradyumna Maharaj, and a magnificent achievement by Tamal Krishnamarge. Very beautiful. There's a scripture that describes what's a perfect drama. There's the Ayurveda, and there's the Shilpa Shastra, which is the Veda about architecture, and it describes how a drama can be composed, and the Jagannath Priyanatakam is just like that. Very, very. I mean, I really would like to figure out how to get a copy of that and distribute it, because it was on Lord Chaitanya's 500th appearance day, right? You remember that, when that drama came out?
I think that's right.
Yeah. When we can glorify Krishna, and we can present Krishna's pastimes in a way that's attractive and engaging and inspiring people in devotional service. That's very pleasing to Srila Prabhupada, and he did that. I know there's a lot of things that he did, but that's one thing that's really, really, I found that very moving. Oh, glory to Prabhupada, Hare Krishna.
Roger, you have any more to?
I'm just relishing these pictures. We can't even imagine how pleased Prabhupada was with him with his China. At one time, so the first Chinese devotee that ever came to India was in 1974. Yashamati Sutta was his name, and it was Burijan Prabhu was trying to spread Krishna consciousness in Hong Kong, and when Prabhupada was so pleased, he told Burijan Prabhu, you have to bring at least one Chinese devotee. So he brought him, and Prabhupada said, "This, one devotee in China is like 1,000 devotees everywhere else." He said, and and now, by Tamal Krishnamarge's efforts, there's so many devotees all over China. It's and so sincere, gosh, so sincere. It really was an honor visiting them and getting to know some of them. Yeah.
This is a great picture from 55th Street. There's Budi Manta, the devotee that brought me to see Tamar Krishnamarge. Rameshwar Tripurari Swami, Tosan. And you can see these beautiful murals. This one devotee was excellent. Vishnu, I think his name was Vishnu. He painted these murals all around the temple room, different pastimes of Lord Chaitanya and Krishna and stuff like that. Romapad Swami. Anyway, yeah, this was 55th Street Temple.
Is that Rameshwar Prabhu right behind Prabhupada?
Yeah, Rameshwar.
He gave class here just on Sunday, days ago.
Yes, that's him. And this Kapindra, who was a very far out preacher. I think it's Jitananda. He did all the laundry for all the devotees, 200 devotees in the temple. He would get we had bags, you would throw your dhotis, your kurtas, and then give it to him, and he would return it back. Tosan Krishna Prabhu, who was instrumental in getting the permit for the Rathayatra, Rathayatra, New York. This is Haridas. This is Sri Ram, who is the temple treasurer. Romapad Swami. Kavichandra?
No,
not Karnapur.
Kanapur?
He's living in Vrindavan as a sannyas. I forget.
Yeah. I can't remember. Yeah.
And Adi Keshava. Oh, and Tamal Krishnamarge.
Oh, and Prabhupada.
And of course, Srila Prabhupada.
Bindu Madhava Prabhu, when they shared Krishna consciousness with Motorcycle Bob, when you were Motorcycle Bob, in what way did they preach to you? Did they tell you you're nonsense? You have to shave up and move in. This whole world is illusion. Give it up. Or they told you that you're a great spiritualist. You just have to take one baby step forward. What kind of preaching was it back then?
Well, I first met the devotees when I was 13 at high school, 8th grade or 10th grade. And I remember hearing all the time how I'm suffering, I'm miserable, I'm suffering, I'm miserable, there's no enjoyment. And I was like, I'm in great physical condition. I like I like going to school. I have my friends, and I was like, I mean, now I understand, or I'm starting to understand, how the body is suffering and miserable, and of course Prabhupada's famous saying, "Don't think this won't happen to you." So now I'm understanding how there is misery, but at age 13, 14, teenage years, you're in good physical condition, and at least in my case, I was pretty happy. At least I thought I was happy. But it was the philosophy, and just seeing how the devotees living and living that lifestyle. Sometimes I get up early and I'll watch Mangal Artik at Alachua in bed. I'll wake up and I'll just turn on the TV and I could experience Mangal Artik. I mean, I used to experience that every day for years and years and years, getting up early and going to see God. Who does that? And just the fragrances of prasadam, the flowers. I mean, you go to, the only time non-devotees see flowers is at weddings and funerals, basically. But devotees see beautiful flower every single day, gorgeous, fragrant flowers and things like that. We used to have flower fights until somebody pointed out. So the in the morning, the sannyasis would get the garlands from the day before, and then at Guru Puj, they'd have the garlands, and they'd take them off, and we'd be having flower fights, and that was ecstatic. And then somebody pointed out, oh, it's prasadam, and we're dancing on prasadam, so we had to put an end to that. But I mean, it was just so nice having all these flowers and lovingly throwing them at your god brothers and god sisters. And I mean, nobody else does that. And prasadam, I mean, nobody has food like Hare Krishna's. So, and colorful and adventures, whether you were on Radha Damodar and going to a different city or a different town every day and meeting different people and things like that, and getting to preach, and going to China or going to the Philippines. I mean, traveling all over the world. I was asked to go to Africa with Brahmananda Maharaj. Fortunately or unfortunately, that didn't happen. But I mean, there was so many almost daily adventures going on. It was just such a wonderful thing.
Okay. Bhima Prabhu says, getting up in the morning and going to see God. Who does that? Classic line. Yes, yes. Okay. Would anyone else like to share anything? Akiko-chan, you're beautiful. You're beautifying yourself for Krishna. We were talking about that in class. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. Rajavihari Prabhu, thank you so much for your contribution. Beautiful. Thank you very much. We look forward to your class. Rajavihari Prabhu is giving class this week on this channel, so stay tuned.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. All right. So it's 8:04. Thank you very much, everybody. Tamar Krishnamarge ki jai. Bindu Madhava Prabhu ki jai. Everybody on this class ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, King of Books ki jai. Have a wonderful day. Let's follow. I remember Ganeshan Prabhu was once telling me, just look at the parampara, look at Prabhupada, look at Prabhupada's guru, look at Prabhupada's guru's guru, look at all the spiritual masters that are in our line. And we are allowed to practice in the same line with these great devotees. How wonderful it is. So we have Tamar Krishnamarge in our line. So let's take inspiration from his life and his teachings and his example and carry on. Thank you very much, Motorcycle Bob Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences in the early days. Okay, All right. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Haribol.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.